The Seventh Door. Prologue. Ethan Graves stood at the edge of the overgrown driveway, staring up at the house he had just inherited. It loomed before him, a decaying Victorian mansion perched at the edge of a cliff, overlooking a restless sea. The letter from his estranged uncle had been brief, just a deed, a key, and 6 words scrawled at the bottom of the page. Do not open the seventh door. Ethan had never met his uncle in person. Simon Graves had been an eccentric figure, a wealthy recluse who had vanished from public life decades ago. Some said he had lost his mind. Others whispered about the strange occurrences in the house on Blackwood Cliff. Now, the house belonged to Ethan, and he was about to find out why his uncle had left it to him. With a deep breath, he walked up the steps, inserted the old brass key into the lock, and turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a darkened foyer lined with dust-covered furniture and candlelit sconces. But it wasn't the eerie silence or the smell of aged wood that made Ethan hesitate. It was the 7 identical doors lining the far wall. 7 doors, each one sealed shut. 7 doors hiding whatever secrets his uncle had left behind. And one of them, the 7th, was never meant to be opened. Chapter 1: The Inheritance. Ethan's footsteps echoed through the empty house as he moved deeper inside. The air was thick with dust and the scent of aged paper. The place was filled with relics of a life long forgotten, shelves lined with old books, portraits of unknown ancestors, and clocks that had stopped ticking years ago. The only thing truly out of place was the 7 doors. They stood in perfect alignment on the far wall of the grand study, each identical in design, tall, black-wooded, and adorned with a brass keyhole. There were no markings, no numbers, no indication of what lay beyond them. Ethan approached them cautiously, running his fingers over the smooth wood. He checked the knobs, locked, every single one. He glanced at the large desk in the center of the room. Maybe his uncle had left some instructions. As he sifted through old documents and letters, he finally found something useful, a small, ornate wooden box. Inside, 7 keys rested on a velvet lining, each labeled with a Roman numeral. 1, 2, 3, 4, V, 6, 7. Ethan swallowed. The temptation was immediate and overwhelming. His uncle had warned him about the 7th door, but what about the others? He picked up the first key. There was only one way to find out what secrets this house was hiding. Chapter 2: The First Door. Ethan hesitated only briefly before sliding the key labeled I into the first lock. It turned smoothly, and with a soft click, the door creaked open. What lay beyond was impossible. Instead of a room, he found himself staring into a vast, open field bathed in golden sunlight. The air smelled of fresh grass and blooming flowers, and a warm breeze brushed against his skin. It was an entirely different world, stretching endlessly beyond the frame of the door. Ethan's heart pounded. He took a hesitant step forward, his foot crossing the threshold. Immediately, the feeling of the house behind him disappeared. He was inside the new world now. He turned around quickly. The door still stood there, floating in the middle of the field, unattached to anything. The house itself was gone. This was no illusion. Ethan tested the ground beneath him. It felt real. The sun overhead was warm. The distant mountains looked as if they belonged to an untouched paradise. His uncle had discovered something extraordinary. But why had he kept it a secret? Ethan didn't stay long. He wasn't ready to venture too far yet. Carefully, he stepped back through the door and into the study. The door closed behind him with a heavy thud, and when he checked, It was locked again. His breath was shaky. This was bigger than he had ever imagined. And he had 6 more doors to go. Chapter 3: The Second and Third Doors. The second door led to a dense, misty forest where the trees stretched impossibly high. Strange whispers flitted through the air, and shadows moved at the edges of his vision. Something was alive in that place, watching him. He didn't linger. The third door revealed a nightmarish cityscape. Skyscrapers twisted into unnatural shapes, the sky burned red, and the streets were eerily empty. It felt like a world abandoned after some great catastrophe. He could almost hear distant, ghostly echoes of voices that no longer existed. Ethan slammed the door shut, his breathing uneven. Each door led to a completely different reality. Some beautiful, some terrifying. And yet, the 7th door remained locked, its brass key sitting untouched in the box. Chapter 4: The Warning. That night, Ethan dreamt of his uncle's voice. "You must not open the 7th door, Ethan. It was never meant to be opened. There are things we were never meant to see." The words echoed in his mind, but when he awoke, he felt something new. A pull. An unshakable curiosity. He had already come this far. And the 7th key was waiting. Chapter 5: The 7th Door. Ethan stood before the final door, the key in his hand. His uncle's warning rang in his mind, but something deeper compelled him forward. With steady fingers, he slid the key into the lock. The moment it clicked, a cold wind rushed through the room. The air grew heavy, the walls seemed to darken. The house itself groaned as if protesting. Ethan swallowed hard. Then, he turned the handle and opened the door. Beyond it lay nothing. Not darkness. Not light. Just emptiness. A vast, endless void that stretched into infinity. It wasn't a world like the others. It was something else. Something that should not exist. And then, the whispers began. Soft at first, then rising into a chaotic chorus. Voices speaking in languages he couldn't understand. Voices pleading, whispering secrets, calling out to him. Something moved in the void. A presence. It saw him. And it stepped forward. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He tried to move, tried to shut the door, but the force beyond it had already latched onto him. The whispers grew into a deafening roar, and the edges of his vision darkened. Too late. He had opened what was never meant to be opened. And now, something was coming through. Chapter 6: The Thing in the Void. Ethan's muscles locked as the presence in the void moved closer. It had no form, at least, none that his mind could comprehend. Instead, it was a shifting absence, an entity made of everything and nothing at once. The whispers surrounded him, pressing into his skull, burrowing into his thoughts. "You should not be here. You should not have opened the door. Now we see you." His breath came in ragged gasps. He had to close the door, now. But his body wouldn't respond. It was as if an unseen force held him in place, studying him, tasting his fear. Then, a different voice, his uncle's voice, broke through the cacophony. "Run!" The force released its grip just enough for Ethan to stumble backward. Without hesitation, he slammed the door shut. A terrible sound erupted from the other side, a deep, guttural screech, like something furious at being denied entry. The entire house trembled. The walls groaned under the pressure. Ethan shoved his weight against the door and turned the key, locking it. Silence. His hands were shaking. His breath came in shallow gasps. He had made a terrible mistake. But as the tremors in the house settled, he realized something even worse. The whispers hadn't stopped. Chapter 7: The Mark. Ethan backed away from the door, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. The study felt different now, like something had changed. The air was heavier, charged with an unnatural energy. The other doors stood silent, but their presence felt more ominous. He turned toward the mirror above the fireplace and froze. His reflection wasn't quite right. His face was pale, his eyes slightly darker than before. But it was what stood behind him that sent ice down his spine. A shadow, tall, thin, featureless, lingered just behind his shoulder. He spun around. Nothing was there. His breathing turned ragged. He faced the mirror again. The shadow remained. Watching. Waiting. Something from the void had marked him. And it wasn't going to leave. Chapter 8: A Desperate Search. Ethan spent the next 2 days desperately searching for answers. He pored through every book, every document his uncle had left behind. There had to be a way to undo what he had done. In one of his uncle's journals, he finally found something. The seventh door is not a door at all, it is a wound in reality. A passageway into the space between worlds. What lies beyond it is not meant to exist in our plane. Once opened, it cannot be unseen. Once seen, it does not forget you. Ethan swallowed hard. He turned to another page, his hands trembling. The only way to sever the connection is to return what was taken. Return what was taken. But he hadn't taken anything. Had he? His mind flashed back to the moment he opened the door, to the overwhelming presence in the void. Had it reached into him? Had it pulled something from him? Or worse, had it left something behind? He pressed his hands against his face. The whispers in his head had grown louder. The shadow in the mirror felt closer. He was running out of time. Chapter 9: The Other Doors. There was only one solution left. If the seventh door led to something outside reality, maybe one of the other doors held the key to fixing this. Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed the fourth key and unlocked the door. This time, he stepped into a world of endless twilight. Strange structures loomed in the distance, and the air was thick with the scent of something metallic. He had a feeling, an instinct, that something here could help him. But he wasn't alone. As he walked forward, he saw figures emerging from the shadows, tall, cloaked beings with no faces. They stood silently, watching him. And then, as if recognizing something inside him, they began to move. Toward him. Fast. Ethan turned and ran. Chapter 10: The Truth About Simon Graves. Ethan barely made it back to the study, slamming the fourth door shut just in time. His chest heaved with exertion, his skin slick with sweat. But the whispers in his mind were louder than ever. They weren't just coming from the seventh door anymore. They were inside him. With shaking hands, he grabbed another journal. This one was older, the pages yellowed with time. The title made his blood run cold. The Price of the Seventh Door. He flipped through, his heart hammering. Then, he found what he feared most. His uncle had opened the door before. Simon Graves had been the first to unlock the seventh door. And just like Ethan, he had been marked. But instead of letting it consume him, he had sealed the house. The doors. The secrets. He had spent his life keeping whatever was beyond the seventh door from breaking through completely. And now, Ethan had undone all of it. Chapter 11: The Final Choice. Ethan knew what he had to do. The seventh door had to be sealed permanently. But the only way to do that was to give back what had been taken, which meant offering himself. His uncle had locked away the entity, but now it had chosen a new host, a new vessel. If Ethan didn't stop it, it wouldn't just haunt him, it would consume this world. He gripped the seventh key. His final act. His final choice. With a deep breath, he unlocked the seventh door one last time. The void greeted him with open arms. The whispers screamed. And as he stepped inside, he understood. Epilogue: The house waits. The next morning, the house on Blackwood Cliff stood silent. The doors remained locked. The key box sat untouched. No one had seen Ethan Graves since the night before. The only thing left behind was a new warning, scrawled in trembling handwriting on the study desk. Do not open the seventh door. And beneath it, a final message. It is waiting.